The crystal chandelier in the Bellanova estate foyer caught the fabric first. Then the woman wearing it. Vincenzo Bellanova had his phone pressed to his ear, barking orders about a shipment delay in Napoli, when movement on the left wing of the double staircase made his words die mid-sentence. "Boss, you still there?" He wasn't listening anymore. The maid. What was her name again? He'd seen her dozens of times over the past 8 months, always in that gray uniform, hair pulled back, eyes down. She cleaned his office on Tuesdays, brought his coffee black, no sugar, every morning at 6:15 sharp. He'd never really looked at her. Until now. The dress was the color of wine spilled on white linen, deep, unapologetic red that moved like water down her frame. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders instead of that tight bun, and she'd done something to her face that made her eyes look bigger, brighter. "Mr. Bellanova?" His phone buzzed with his assistant's voice. She reached the bottom step, fumbling with a small clutch purse, not seeing him standing there in the shadow of the corridor. A car horn honked outside, and she hurried toward the front door, heels clicking against the floor. "Cancel tomorrow's meeting," Vincenzo said into the phone, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "Sir, that's the—" He hung up. "Where are you going?" The woman jumped, spinning around with wide eyes. Recognition flickered across her face, followed by something like panic. "Mr. Bellanova, I didn't see you there." Clearly. He stepped into the light, and for the first time in 8 months, he actually studied her face. Freckles scattered across her nose, a small scar near her left eyebrow. "I asked you a question." It's my night off." Her fingers twisted the clutch strap. Mrs. Bellanova approved it last week. "That's not what I asked." The horn honked again, longer this time. "I have a date," she said quietly, and something in Vincenzo's chest pulled tight. "I should go. He's waiting." He was waiting. Vincenzo moved before thinking it through, crossing the foyer in 4 long strides. "What's your name?" She blinked. "Sir?" "Your name." I should know your name." "Grace." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Grace Holland, from Nebraska." Nebraska. Right. He'd signed her employment papers himself, hadn't even glanced at them. His mother handled all the household staff. "Well, Grace Holland from Nebraska." He didn't finish the sentence because he didn't know how to finish it. What was he supposed to say? "Don't go. Stay here. Let me look at you for another 5 minutes because somehow I've been blind for 8 months and I need to make up for lost time." The horn blasted 3 times in quick succession. "I really have to go," she whispered, and there was something apologetic in her eyes, like she was sorry for existing in his space, for daring to have a life outside these walls. She slipped past him, and he caught the scent of something sweet. Vanilla, maybe, or honeysuckle. The door opened, closed. Through the window, he watched her slide into a silver sedan, watched it pull away down the long driveway lined with cypress trees. Vincenzo stood in the empty foyer for a long moment, staring at nothing. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed. "Matt, I need you to find out everything about someone." Grace's hands wouldn't stop shaking during dinner. "You okay?" Kevin reached across the table at the little trattoria in Firenze, his smile easy, practiced. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine." She forced herself to smile back, to focus on the man who'd been asking her out for 3 weeks. Kevin worked in accounting for one of the Bellanova subsidiary companies. Nice guy, safe, normal, exactly what she needed. "This place is great, right?" Kevin gestured at the rustic interior, the checkered tablecloths. "My buddy recommended it. Says they make the best carbonara in Florence." Grace nodded, picked at her pasta. It was good, probably. She couldn't really taste anything. Her mind kept replaying that moment in the foyer, the way Vincenzo Bellanova had looked at her like he'd never seen her before. Because he hadn't. Not really. She'd been invisible for 8 months, exactly how she wanted it. Working quietly, saving money, staying out of everyone's way. The Bellanova family paid well, and she needed every euro to send back home to her sister in Omaha. Jenna's medical bills didn't pay themselves. "Grace?" She blinked. "Sorry, what?" "I asked if you wanted dessert." Kevin's smile had dimmed a little. "But maybe we should just call it a night. You seem tired." "No, I'm sorry, She reached for her water glass. "Work's been busy." "Right. The Bellanova estate." He leaned back, studying her. "What's that like? Working for the most powerful family in Tuscany?" "It's just a job." She kept her voice neutral. "They pay me to clean. I clean." "Come on, you must see stuff, hear things." His eyes had taken on a gleam she didn't like. "I mean, Vincenzo Bellanova. The guy's practically royalty around here. What's he really like?" And there it was, the real reason Kevin had asked her out. Grace set down her fork carefully. "He's my employer, that's all I know." "But you work in his house. You must. I should go." She stood, reaching for her purse. "Thank you for dinner." "Wait, Grace, I didn't mean—" Kevin half rose, looking flustered. "I was just curious. Can't we— Good night, Kevin." She was out the door before he could finish, stepping into the cool Florentine night air. The Arno River glittered with reflected lights a few streets away, and she started walking, not ready to call for a ride back to the estate yet. Her phone buzzed. Jenna's name lit up the screen. "Hey, Gracie." Her sister's voice sounded thin, tired. "How was the big date?" "It was—" Grace exhaled slowly. "It was fine. That bad, son." He only wanted information about the Bellanovas. She kicked a loose cobblestone. "I'm just a means to an end." "Not everyone's like that," Jenna said softly. "You'll find someone who sees you." Grace thought about dark eyes in a shadowed corridor, about a voice asking her name like it mattered. "Maybe," she whispered. "How are you feeling?" "Good days and bad days." Jenna tried to sound upbeat. "The new treatment is helping, I think. Don't worry about me." But Grace did worry, constantly. It was the reason she'd left everything behind in Nebraska, the reason she'd taken this job halfway across the world. Jenna's leukemia treatments cost more than their parents' farm made in a year. "I sent more money yesterday," Grace said. "Should hit the account by Tuesday." "You don't have to." "Yes, I do." They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. Grace stood on the bridge overlooking the Arno, watching the water move beneath her, wondering how her life had become this small, this hidden, beautiful night. She spun around, heart jumping into her throat. Vincenzo Bellanova leaned against the bridge railing 10 feet away, hands in his pockets, looking like he'd materialized out of shadows. He'd changed from his work suit into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made him look younger, less intimidating. Almost. "Mr. Bellanova." She pressed a hand to her chest. "You scared me." "Sorry." He didn't sound sorry. "Date ended early." "How did you—" She stopped. "Are you following me?" "Before we go any further, I need your honest take. In a world of bad choices, do you play it safe or do you play to win? Type safe or win in the comments and tell me which city you're representing. I'm curious to see how you all think. If you're here for the stories that most people are too scared to tell, make sure you're subscribed with that notification bell on. Hit that like button to show your support. And now, let's see how this unfolds. I was having dinner nearby." He gestured vaguely behind him. "Saw you walking alone. Florence isn't always safe at night. I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can." He moved closer, and she caught the scent of expensive cologne, something woody and warm. Grace Holland from Nebraska. Hearing her full name in his voice did something strange to her pulse. "I should get back to the estate," she said, even though part of her wanted to stay right here, wanted to understand why he was looking at her like that. "I'll drive you." "That's not necessary. I insist." It wasn't a request. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "My car will be here in 2 minutes." "Mr. Bellanova." "Vincenzo." His eyes met hers. "When it's just us, you can call me Vincenzo." Just us. Like they were something other than employer and employee. Like those 8 months of invisibility had never happened. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, and Vincenzo opened the back door, waiting. Grace hesitated, knowing this was a line she probably shouldn't cross, but also knowing she was going to cross it anyway. She slid into the car. He followed, maintaining a respectful distance as the driver pulled into traffic. The leather seats were soft, the interior smelling of money and power. Grace had cleaned this car once, detailed every surface. Sitting in it felt surreal. "How long have you been in Italy?" Vincenzo asked. 8 months. "Why here? Why the Bellanova estate?" "Because the job posting offered housing and a salary 3 times what she could make in Omaha. Because she was desperate. Because her sister was dying, and she'd have taken a job anywhere, doing anything." "The opportunity came up," she said instead. "I needed a change. From Nebraska." He said it like he was testing the word. "That's different from Tuscany." "Very different." She looked out the window at the passing lights. "I grew up on a farm. Corn and soybeans as far as you could see. This..." She gestured at the ancient buildings, the narrow streets. "This is like living in a painting. Do you miss it? Home?" More than she could say. But home meant watching Jenna get sicker, meant feeling helpless, meant counting pennies that would never be enough. "Sometimes," she whispered. They rode in silence for a while. The city gave way to rolling hills, vineyards sleeping in the darkness. The Bellanova estate sat on a hilltop outside Firenze, sprawling and old and beautiful in a way that still took Grace's breath away. "Can I ask you something?" Vincenzo's voice cut through the quiet. "Yes." "Why the red dress?" She turned to look at him. "What?" "You've worked for my family for 8 months. I've never seen you in anything but gray. Tonight." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Tonight you were impossible to miss. So I'm wondering, why tonight? Why that dress?" Grace's cheeks heated. "It was just a date. I wanted to look nice." "For Kevin from accounting?" She stiffened. "How do you know his name?" "I know everyone who works for me." Not quite true, she thought, remembering how he'd asked her name just hours ago. "Is it serious? You and Kevin?" That's not appropriate to ask." "Probably not." He shifted, and suddenly he was closer, near enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "But I'm asking anyway." "There is no me and Kevin." The words came out sharper than intended. "He wanted information about your family, not a relationship with me. So no, it's not serious. It's nothing." Something flickered across Vincenzo's face. Satisfaction, maybe. Or relief. The car turned onto the long driveway. Cypress trees lined both sides like sentinels, and then the estate rose before them, lit up against the night sky. 3 stories of stone and history, windows glowing warm. The driver stopped near the servants' entrance at the side of the house. "Thank you for the ride," Grace said, reaching for the door handle. Vincenzo's hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Grace." She froze. "Have breakfast with me, tomorrow." "What?" "Breakfast." His thumb moved against the inside of her wrist, probably feeling her racing pulse. 7 o'clock, the terrace. I serve you breakfast every morning, at 6:15. "No, not as my maid." His eyes held hers. as my guest. This was insane. This was crossing every line that existed between them. This was asking for trouble in 100 different ways. "Okay," she whispered. He smiled. Really smiled. And it transformed his whole face, made him look less like a powerful businessman and more like a man who'd just gotten exactly what he wanted. 7 o'clock, he repeated, releasing her wrist. Grace fled the car before she could do something stupid, like lean into that smile, like ask him why now. Why her? Why tonight of all nights? She made it to her room, a small but comfortable space in the servants' quarters, and collapsed onto the bed, still wearing the red dress. Her phone showed 3 missed calls from Kevin and 1 text. "I'm sorry. Can we try again?" She deleted it. Tomorrow she'd wake up and this would all feel like a fever dream. Tomorrow she'd remember her place, remember why she was here, remember that men like Vincenzo Bellanova didn't have breakfast with their maids, except he'd asked. And she'd said, yes. Vincenzo didn't sleep. He stood on his private balcony overlooking the vineyards, nursing a glass of Chianti and trying to figure out what the hell he was doing. 8 months. She'd been in his house for 8 months, and he'd never noticed. How was that possible? How had he looked past her every single day? "Because you weren't looking," a voice in his head answered. "Because you've been too focused on business, on expansion, on proving to everyone that you're worthy of the Bellanova name." His phone rang. His mother. "Mama," he answered in Italian. "Vincenzo, caro. We need to talk about Francesca." And there it was, the reason he'd been avoiding his mother's calls all week. "There's nothing to talk about. She wants another chance. Her father called me yesterday. I don't care what Aldo Marchetti wants." Vincenzo's grip tightened on his glass. "Francesca made her choice 6 months ago when I found her in bed with my business partner. People make mistakes, amore. She was confused. She was sleeping with Tommaso for 4 months, mama. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He exhaled hard. "I'm done with this conversation. The Marchetti alliance is important for—" "Good night, mama." He hung up before she could finish, immediately feeling guilty but also exhausted. His mother meant well. She always meant well. But she saw the world through the lens of family alliances, business connections, strategic marriages. She'd loved Francesca because Francesca came from the right family, had the right connections, knew how to navigate their world. She would hate Grace Holland from Nebraska. The thought made him smile despite everything. He pulled up the file Matt had sent over in Sia, hour ago. Grace Elizabeth Holland, 26 years old, degree in art history from a small college in Omaha. No criminal record. No debt except student loans. A younger sister named Jenna undergoing treatment for leukemia at Methodist Hospital. The medical bills were astronomical. Vincenzo stared at the numbers, understanding clicking into place. This was why she'd taken a job so far from home, why she lived in a tiny room and wore the same 3 outfits on her days off, why she'd never once asked for time off or complained about anything. She was supporting her dying sister. Something in his chest cracked open. He made a call. "Dr. Ricci?" "Yes, I know it's late. I need information about a patient in Omaha, Nebraska." Grace woke at 5:30 out of habit, then remembered she didn't need to bring Vincenzo his coffee this morning. Someone else would handle the early routine. She was having breakfast with him instead of serving it to him. The thought made her stomach flip. She showered, changed into the nicest dress she owned that wasn't the red one, a simple navy blue thing she'd bought at a second-hand shop in Siena. Fixed her hair. Minimal makeup. Told herself this didn't mean anything, that she was just being polite, that everything would go back to normal after today. She didn't believe herself. At 6:55, she made her way through the servant corridors, emerged into the main house, walked toward the terrace that overlooked the eastern vineyards. The sun was just starting to rise, painting everything gold and pink. Vincenzo stood by the railing, dressed casually in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. He turned when he heard her footsteps, and that smile from last night reappeared. Grace. Mr. Bellanova. Vincenzo, he corrected gently. Vincenzo, she amended, the name feeling strange and intimate on her tongue. I'm not sure this is a good idea. Probably not. He pulled out a chair at the small table that had been set with fresh pastries, fruit, coffee. But I'm hoping you'll stay anyway. She should leave. She should make an excuse, retreat to the safety of invisibility, protect herself from whatever this was becoming. Instead, she sat down. Tell me about Nebraska, Vincenzo said, pouring her coffee. He remembered she took it with cream and 1 sugar, something she didn't even realize he'd noticed. What do you want to know? Everything. He settled into the chair across from her. Everything you're willing to tell me. So she did. She told him about growing up on her parents' farm, about summers spent helping with harvest, about the way the sky looked during tornado season. She told him about Jenna, about how her little sister had always been the brave one, the adventurous one, and how unfair it was that someone so full of life was fighting just to survive. She didn't tell him about the bills, about the desperation, about crying herself to sleep some nights because she didn't know if any of this would be enough. Vincenzo listened to every word, asked questions that proved he was actually paying attention, and somewhere during the conversation, the sun climbed higher, and the coffee went cold, and Grace forgot to be nervous. Your turn, she said finally. Tell me something real about you. Real? Not the business stuff, not what I could read in any newspaper. She met his eyes. Something true. He was quiet for a long moment, considering. I hate olives, he said finally. She blinked. What? Olives. Can't stand them. Have never liked them. He smiled ruefully. Which is a problem when your family owns olive groves in Umbria, and everyone expects you to wax poetic about harvest seasons and flavor profiles. Grace laughed. Actually laughed, and it felt good. Felt normal. How have you hidden this? Very carefully. He leaned forward, conspiratorial. I pretend to taste them at family events, make appreciative noises, then spit them into a napkin when no one's looking. That's actually kind of terrible. I know. He didn't look sorry at all. Tell anyone, and I'll have to deny everything. Your secret's safe with me. She reached for a pastry, bit into flaky layers of sweet ricotta. What else? What else what? What else don't I know about Vincenzo Bellanova? He studied her, and something shifted in his expression, something serious beneath the playful banter. I was engaged 6 months ago, to a woman named Francesca Marchetti. Grace's hand stilled halfway to her mouth. I found her in bed with my business partner, my best friend since childhood. His voice stayed even, but she could hear the hurt underneath. They'd been together for 4 months. Everyone knew except me. I'm sorry, she whispered. Don't be. It taught me something important. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. It taught me that I'd rather be alone than with someone who sees me as a means to an end. Someone who wants the Bellanova name more than they want. Me, his words from last night echoed in her head. When it's just us, you can call me Vincenzo. Just us. Just 2 people sitting on a terrace watching the sunrise. No titles, no expectations, no armor. Why me? The question slipped out before she could stop it. Why are you telling me this? Because you put on that red dress for a man who didn't deserve it, Vincenzo said quietly. Because you've been invisible in my house for 8 months, and I think maybe you wanted to be invisible. And I want to know why. I want to know you. Grace's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory. This was stepping into something she couldn't control. "I need this job," she said instead of answering. "I can't afford to lose it." "You won't. You don't know that. If your family finds out about whatever this is," she gestured between them, "they won't approve." "I don't care. You should." She stood, needing distance. "I'm not from your world, Vincenzo. I don't know the rules. I don't know how to play the games. I'm just a farm girl from Nebraska who's trying to keep her head above water." He stood too, moved around the table until he was close enough to touch, but didn't. "Grace, I'm not asking you to play games. I'm asking you to have breakfast with me. To let me see you. To let me—" He trailed off and she waited, barely breathing. "To let me try," he finished softly. "Try to give you what you deserve. Try to be someone who sees you, not what you can do for me." Tears pricked her eyes. No one had said anything like that to her. Maybe ever. "What if I disappoint you?" she whispered. "What if you don't?" The sun was fully up now, bathing everything in warm light. Somewhere in the vineyards, workers were starting their day. Inside the house, the rest of the staff would be moving through their morning routines. The real world was waking up, and soon they'd have to step back into it. But for this moment, on this terrace, it was just them. "One more breakfast," Grace heard herself say. "Tomorrow. Same time. If this still feels right after that, then maybe," Vincenzo agreed, and his smile could have lit up the entire valley. She left before she could change her mind, before she could do something reckless like reach for him, like ask him to make promises neither of them could keep. Back in her room, she pulled out her phone and called Jenna. "You sound different," her sister said immediately. "What happened?" Grace looked at her reflection in the small mirror above her dresser. Same face, same freckles, same scar by her eyebrow. But something had changed. Something had shifted. "I think," she touched her lips, remembering Vincenzo's eyes on her. "I think maybe I'm not invisible anymore." "Good," Jenna said fiercely. "It's about damn time." The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments. Breakfast on the terrace became their routine. 7 o'clock, every morning. Just the two of them. Sometimes they talked about everything. Books, music, childhood memories, dreams they'd tucked away. Sometimes they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher while the world woke around them. Vincenzo started taking her places, little weekend trips when she had time off. They drove to San Gimignano, wandered through medieval streets, ate gelato while sitting on ancient stone walls. He took her to a tiny vineyard in Chianti, where his uncle made wine the old way, and they stomped grapes barefoot, laughing like teenagers. He bought her things, small things, thoughtful things. A book of poetry she'd mentioned once, a scarf in soft blue because he said it matched her eyes, a necklace with a small compass pendant. "So you always find your way home," he'd said, and she'd cried because she wasn't sure where home was anymore. They didn't kiss. It was driving both of them crazy. Vincenzo would reach for her hand while they walked, would tuck hair behind her ear, would let his fingers linger on her wrist or her shoulder or the small of her back. Every touch was careful, deliberate, asking a question neither of them had answered yet. Grace wanted to. God, she wanted to let herself fall completely. But something held her back. Fear, maybe. Or the knowledge that fairy tales didn't happen to girls like her. Or the certainty that, when his family found out, this beautiful bubble would pop. And they would find out. It was only a matter of time. The bomb dropped on a Thursday afternoon. Grace was cleaning Vincenzo's office, dusting the bookshelves while he worked at his desk. It had become another one of their rituals. She'd do her actual job while he handled phone calls and paperwork, and they'd exist in the same space without needing to talk, comfortable in each other's presence. The door burst open without warning. A A woman swept in like a storm in designer clothes, all sharp edges and expensive perfume. Dark hair, perfect makeup, eyes that could cut glass. Francesca Marchetti. Grace recognized her from photos she'd seen around the estate. Vincenzo's ex-fiancée, the woman who'd broken his heart 6 months ago. "Vincenzo, darling, we need to talk," Francesca said, not even glancing at Grace. "I've been trying to reach you for weeks. Get out." Vincenzo's voice was ice. "Don't be like that. I made a mistake. I've apologized 100 times, and I've ignored you 100 times. He stood, moving around the desk. What part of "they were done" is unclear. That's when Francesca finally looked at Grace. Really looked, her eyes traveling from Grace's simple cleaning uniform to the dust cloth in her hand, to the surprise on her face. "Oh," Francesca said, and the single word dripped with venom. "Oh, I see. The staff is different now. Are you training them yourself, Vincenzo?" Grace's cheeks burned. "Leave, now." Vincenzo stepped between them. "You have no right to be here. I have every right. My father and your mother are meeting as we speak to discuss our reconciliation. There is no reconciliation. And the merger of our family's holdings in Lazio. So unless you want to disappoint your mother and blow up a multi-million euro deal, you'll stop playing house with the help and—" "Enough!" The word cracked through the room like thunder. Grace had never heard Vincenzo yell before, had never seen his face like this. Cold and furious and barely controlled. "You have exactly 10 seconds to walk out of this office before I call security," he said quietly. "And then you will never set foot on my property again." Francesca's perfect facade cracked. "You can't be serious. Over some cleaning girl." Her name is Grace. Vincenzo's hands had curled into fists. "And you don't get to talk about her. You don't get to look at her. You don't get to breathe in her direction, understand?" Francesca's mouth opened, closed. Then she laughed, sharp and brittle. "You're making a huge mistake. When you come to your senses, don't expect me to take you back." "I won't." She left in a whirlwind of rage, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence fell. Grace couldn't move, couldn't speak. Her hands were shaking, the dust cloth falling to the floor unnoticed. "Grace, your mother is meeting with her father," she whispered. "About a merger, about your reconciliation." "I don't care what my mother—" "Yes, you do." She finally looked at him, saw the frustration and helplessness warring in his expression. "You do care because it's your family's business, your family's legacy, and I'm not. I can't be the reason you lose that." "You're not a reason. You're a choice." He moved toward her. "My choice." "Vincenzo," tears threatened. "This can't work. You know it can't. Your world and mine. They don't overlap. They can't. Then we make a new world." He reached for her hands, held them tight. "Grace, I don't want Francesca. I don't want someone who sees me as a business transaction. I want you, just you, however I can have you. Even if it costs you everything. You're asking the wrong question." His thumbs moved over her knuckles. "What if keeping you costs me nothing that actually matters? What if the only thing that matters is this, right here? You and me?" She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could be simple, that choosing each other would be enough. But she'd seen Francesca's face, heard the certainty in her voice. The Bellanova family empire was built on alliances, on strategic connections. Vincenzo might be willing to throw it all away for her, but could she let him? "I need to think," she whispered. "Please, I need time." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Okay, take whatever time you need." "But Grace—" He lifted her hand, pressed his lips to her knuckles. A soft, lingering kiss that made her heart ache. "Don't run. Don't disappear on me. Promise." "I promise," she said, even as the lie sat bitter on her tongue, because she'd already made up her mind. She was going home to Nebraska, back to Jenna, back to the farm, back to a life that made sense. She'd find another way to pay for the medical bills, find another job, find a way to survive without these stolen mornings and Italian sunrises, and a man who looked at her like she was worth fighting for. Better to leave now than to wait until his family forced the choice. Better to end it on her terms. Better to break her own heart than to break his. That night, she packed her bags while tears streamed down her face, wrote a letter she'd never send, booked a flight leaving tomorrow afternoon. One more morning, she thought. One last breakfast. Then she'd go. And Vincenzo Bellanova would realize she'd been right all along, that fairy tales didn't happen to girls from Nebraska, that Cinderella stories only worked in books, that sometimes love wasn't enough, even when it felt like everything. Grace didn't sleep. She sat on the floor of her small room surrounded by half-packed suitcases, holding her phone and staring at Jenna's last text. Whatever you're running from, stop. Face it. You're braver than this. But she wasn't brave. Brave would be staying, fighting for something that was doomed from the start. Brave would be believing that a maid from Nebraska could actually have a future with a man whose family name was carved into Italian history. Stupid would be staying. Smart was leaving before she got hurt worse. Her alarm went off at 6:30. 7 o'clock breakfast. Their last one. She changed into jeans and a simple white shirt, left the navy dress hanging in the closet. No point pretending anymore. Pulled her hair into a ponytail, splashed cold water on her face to hide the evidence of crying. The walk to the terrace felt like walking to an execution. Vincenzo was already there, standing at the railing with his back to her. The sunrise painted him in gold, and Grace memorized the picture, this moment, this man, this impossible thing they'd built together. Grace! He turned, and his smile died when he saw her face. What's wrong? I can't do this anymore. The words hung in the air between them like stones. Can't do what? His voice was careful, controlled. This. Us. Whatever we're pretending this is. She wrapped her arms around herself. I'm leaving today, going back to Nebraska. I've already booked the flight. Vincenzo went very still. Because of Francesca? Because of what she said yesterday? Because it's the truth. Grace forced herself to meet his eyes. Your mother is trying to broker a reconciliation. Your family needs that merger. And I'm nobody. I can't be the reason you lose everything. You're not nobody. He crossed the terrace in 3 strides, stopped just short of touching her. Grace, I'm your maid, she interrupted. That's what I am. That's all I'll ever be to your family. And maybe this was nice while it lasted, but it's not real. It can't be real. Don't do that. His hands clenched at his sides. Don't diminish what we have just because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm being realistic. You're terrified. His voice was gentle now, and somehow that was worse than anger. I see it. I understand it. But Grace, running away won't make it hurt less. Maybe not. But staying will hurt worse. She blinked back tears. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Then tell me the truth. He finally touched her, hands cupping her face, thumbs brushing away the tears that escaped. Look at me, and tell me you don't feel this. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me I'm alone in this, and I'll let you go right now. She couldn't. God help her. She couldn't lie to him. What I feel doesn't matter, she whispered instead. Sometimes love isn't enough. It's a start, though. His forehead touched hers, and they stood there, breathing each other in. Grace, I'm not asking you to fight my battles. I'm asking you to let me fight for US. Let me handle my family, handle Francesca, handle all of it. Just don't leave. Not yet. Not like this. Vincenzo, 1 week. His voice was rough with desperation. "Give me 1 week to prove this can work. If after 7 days you still want to go, I'll drive you to the airport myself. I'll pay for everything. Make sure Jenna has the best doctors. Make sure you never have to worry about money again. Just don't walk away right now when we haven't even tried." "That's not fair." "I know. I don't care." He pulled back just enough to look at her. "I'm not ready to lose you. I don't know if I'll ever be ready for that. So I'm asking, please, 1 week." She should say no. Should stick to her decision, protect her heart, do the smart thing. "What happens after a week?" she asked instead. "I don't know. Maybe everything falls apart. Maybe my family disowns me, and Francesca burns the estate down, and we end up living in a shack somewhere, eating olive oil and pasta." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "But at least we'd have tried. At least we'd know." "You really hate olives that much?" He laughed, surprised. "I'd learn to love them if it meant keeping you." The sun climbed higher. Birds sang in the cypress trees. Somewhere in the house, the staff was starting their day, and soon the real world would intrude again with all its complications. But right now, it was just them on this terrace. And Grace was tired of being smart, tired of being realistic, tired of running from the first real thing she'd felt in years. 1 week, she whispered. Vincenzo's smile could have powered the entire Tuscan countryside. He kissed her forehead, soft and reverent, and Grace closed her eyes against the sweetness of it. "Thank you," he said against her skin. "Thank you for trusting me." She just hoped that trust wouldn't destroy them both. The week started with a declaration of war. Vincenzo called a family meeting that same afternoon, gathering his mother, his 2 younger brothers, and his uncle Salvatore in the formal dining room. Grace wasn't there. He'd insisted she stay away from the fallout, but she heard about it later from Maria, the head housekeeper, who'd taken a surprising liking to her. Signora Bellanova turned purple, Maria reported in rapid Italian, while chopping vegetables for dinner. Purple like an eggplant. She said Vincenzo had lost his mind, that he was throwing away his future for una ragazza qualunque. Some random girl. Grace's Italian had improved over 8 months, enough to understand every cutting word. What did Vincenzo say? He told her the Marchetti merger could happen without him marrying Francesca. Told her he'd handle the business side himself. Broke her a better deal. But his personal life was not negotiable. Maria's knife moved faster. Then his brother Andrew laughed. Said it was about time someone in the family married for love instead of land. And his mother? She left, refused to discuss it further. But Maria glanced around, lowered her voice. She called Aldo Marchetti after. I heard her in the study. She told him to bring Francesca to the house next week for dinner, that she'd handle Vincenzo. Grace's stomach dropped. Next week? See, Sunday night. The whole Marchetti family is coming. So that was the plan. Force them together. Create a situation where Vincenzo would have to choose between Grace and a massive business deal in front of everyone. Grace found Vincenzo in his office an hour later, staring at his computer screen without really seeing it. I heard about the meeting, she said from the doorway. He looked up, and she saw exhaustion in the lines around his eyes. Maria talks too much. She likes me. Grace came in, closed the door behind her. Your mother invited Francesca to dinner Sunday. I know, she told me. He leaned back in his chair. It's a power play. She thinks if Francesca and I are in the same room, I'll remember what we had, realize I'm making a mistake. Will you? No. No hesitation. Grace, what Francesca and I had was comfortable. Easy, expected. It wasn't real. We didn't have this. He stood, moved around the desk, pulled her into his arms. Grace let herself sink into the embrace, breathing in his cologne and warmth and solid presence. What if I mess it up? She whispered against his chest. What if I don't know which fork to use or say the wrong thing or then you mess it up? He kissed the top of her head. Grace, I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be you. Your family won't accept me. My family will learn to accept you, or they'll learn to live without me. His voice was firm. I'm not losing you over their expectations. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that it could be that simple. But Sunday was coming, and with it, a reckoning neither of them could avoid. Vincenzo spent the next 3 days trying to prepare Grace for what was coming, and simultaneously trying to prepare himself for the possibility that it might all go horribly wrong. He took her shopping in Firenze on Friday, insisting she needed a new dress for Sunday's dinner, even though she protested the expense. Vincenzo, I can't let you buy me clothes. You can, and you will. He guided her into a boutique on Via de Tornabuoni, one where his mother shopped. This isn't about impressing anyone. It's about you feeling confident. Armor for battle. The sales associate, a woman named Julia, who'd known Vincenzo since he was a child, raised her eyebrows when she saw Grace but said nothing, professional to her core. Something elegant, but not trying too hard, Vincenzo told Julia in Italian. Something that said she belongs without screaming it. Julia studied Grace for a long moment, then smiled. I have just the thing. She returned with 3 dresses. The first was too formal, the second too casual. The third. Grace stepped out of the dressing room wearing deep emerald green that brought out the color of her eyes and made her skin glow. Simple cut, elegant lines, nothing too revealing but fitted enough to show her figure. Classic. Timeless. Perfect. This one, Vincenzo said, his voice coming out rougher than intended. Grace turned, looking at herself in the 3-way mirror. It's too expensive. I don't care. Vincenzo. Grace, please. He came up behind her, met her eyes in the mirror. Let me do this. Let me give you something that makes you feel as beautiful as I see you. She bit her lip, considering, then nodded. Julia packed up the dress along with shoes and a simple gold necklace that Vincenzo insisted on, and they left the boutique as the sun began to set over the city. Thank you, Grace said quietly as they walked along the Arno. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He laced his fingers through hers, the gesture becoming more natural every day. Besides, I'm selfish. I want you to walk into that dinner knowing you have every right to be there. Want you to look Francesca in the eye and not flinch. I don't think a dress is going to make that happen. Maybe not. But it's a start. He stopped walking, turned to face her. Grace, whatever happens Sunday, whatever my mother says, whatever Francesca does, I'm with you. Okay? You're not alone in this. She nodded, and he saw the fear she was trying to hide. Saw the girl from Nebraska, who'd never imagined she'd be standing here preparing to face down Italian aristocracy over dinner. Tell me about your family, he said suddenly. Your parents. What are they like? Grace smiled, surprised by the question. My dad is steady, quiet. He can fix anything with duct tape and baling wire. Loves John Wayne movies and hates technology. My mom is his opposite. Loud, opinionated, always cooking for someone. She cries at commercials and laughs at her own jokes. Do they know about us? No, I haven't. I wasn't sure how to explain it. She looked down. They'd worry. Think you're too good for me, or that I'm getting in over my head. They'd be right about the second part. He lifted her chin, but wrong about the first. I'm not too good for you, Grace. If anything, it's the reverse. Now you're just being ridiculous. He kissed her cheek, cutting off her protest. Let his lips linger there, felt her breath catch. I want to meet them someday, he said softly. Your parents. Jenna. I want to see where you came from, understand what made you you. They live on a farm in the middle of nowhere, It's not exactly glamorous. I don't need glamorous. I just need you. They walked back to where his car was parked, and the drive back to the estate was quiet, comfortable. Grace fell asleep against the window, and Vincenzo glanced over at her, at the way the evening light caught in her hair, at the peaceful expression on her face. He'd meant what he said. He'd choose her over everything else if it came to that. The business, the family expectations, the Bellanova legacy. None of it mattered as much as the woman sleeping in his passenger seat. He just hoped he wouldn't have to prove it. Saturday, Vincenzo took Grace to meet Andrew. His younger brother lived in a converted farmhouse 20 minutes from the estate, preferring distance from their mother's constant supervision. Andrew was different from Vincenzo. Artistic, where Vincenzo was practical. Impulsive, where Vincenzo was measured. But they'd always been close. "So you're the mystery woman," Andrew said when they arrived, looking Grace up and down with undisguised curiosity. "The one who's got Mama clutching her pearls and Francesca plotting murder." "Andrew," Vincenzo warned. "What? I'm just stating facts." He grinned at Grace. "I like you already. Anyone who pisses off Francesca is okay in my book." Grace relaxed a little. "It's nice to meet you. Come in. I made lunch. Well, I attempted lunch. Might be terrible." Andrew led them through his house, which was full of paintings and sculptures and organized chaos. "Hope you like burnt risotto." The risotto wasn't actually burnt, just slightly overdone. They ate on Andrew's back patio, overlooking olive groves that technically belonged to the family, but that Andrew had claimed for his own artistic retreats. "So," Andrew said between bites, "how'd you two actually meet? And don't give me the 'she works at the estate' line. I want the real story." Vincenzo and Grace exchanged glances. "She wore a red dress," Vincenzo said simply. "That's it? That's the whole story? That's the beginning?" Vincenzo's hand found Grace's under the table. Everything changed after that. Andrew studied them both, and something softened in his expression. "Yeah, I can see that. You look different, Fratello. Lighter, maybe. Like you're not carrying the whole world anymore." "I'm trying not to." "Good." Andrew turned to Grace. "Fair warning about tomorrow. Mama's going to be brutal. She'll ask invasive questions, make subtle digs, try to make you feel small. It's what she does when she's threatened." "Why would I threaten her?" Grace asked. "Because you're not controllable, not part of her plan." Andrew shrugged. "Our mother has spent 30 years orchestrating our lives like we're chess pieces. Vincenzo was supposed to marry Francesca, merge the families, produce heirs, continue the legacy. You're unpredictable. She hates unpredictable." "What about you?" Grace asked. "What's your role in her plan?" "The disappointment," he said it cheerfully. "The artistic son who refuses to join the family business. She gave up on me years ago, which honestly is the best thing that ever happened to me." They talked for hours. Andrew told stories about their childhood, about Vincenzo getting into trouble trying to be perfect, about family dinners that felt more like board meetings. He made Grace laugh with impressions of their Uncle Salvatore, made her feel included in a way she hadn't expected. "You'll do fine tomorrow," Andrew said as they were leaving. "Just remember, you belong there because Vincenzo wants you there. That's the only reason that matters." On the drive home, Grace was quiet. "What are you thinking?" Vincenzo asked. "That I like your brother, and that I'm terrified of your mother. Join the club." He squeezed her hand. "But Grace, you don't have to win her over. You don't have to convince her of anything. You just have to be yourself and let me handle the rest. What if being myself isn't enough? Then she's the one with the problem, not you." They spent Saturday night on the terrace, talking until the stars came out. Grace told him about Jenna's latest text, that the new treatment was working, that the doctors were cautiously optimistic. Vincenzo told her about a call from his uncle Salvatore, who'd apparently told their mother to back off and let Vincenzo live his life. He said something else, too, Vincenzo added. He said he'd never seen me happy until recently. Said whatever I was doing, keep doing it. And what are you doing? Falling in love with you. The words were simple, honest. If I'm not already there. Grace's breath caught. They danced around it for weeks, this thing between them, but neither had named it until now. Vincenzo, you don't have to say it back. I'm not expecting. He paused. I just needed you to know, before tomorrow, before everything gets complicated. I needed you to know that this is real for me. You are real for me. She kissed him then, couldn't help herself, rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his, soft and sweet and full of everything she couldn't say out loud. He made a surprised sound, then pulled her closer, one hand cradling the back of her head, while the other wrapped around her waist. The kiss was gentle, careful, like they were both afraid of breaking something precious. When they finally pulled apart, Grace rested, her forehead against his. I'm falling too, she whispered. I'm terrified, and it's probably a disaster waiting to happen. But I'm falling anyway. He smiled against her hair. Then, we'll fall together. They stayed like that until the night air turned cold, until reality began creeping back in. Tomorrow would bring challenges, confrontations, moments that might test everything they'd built. But tonight, they had this. And for now, that was enough. Sunday arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, warm, the kind of day that belonged in postcards. Grace spent the morning trying not to panic. She showered, dried her hair, applied makeup with shaking hands, put on the emerald dress and gold necklace, slipped into the heels Vincenzo had bought, looked at herself in the mirror and saw a stranger. Not the maid in gray, not the farm girl from Nebraska. Someone in between, trying to be brave. Maria knocked on her door at 5:30. Signorina Grace, they're starting to arrive. Grace's stomach flipped. Okay, I'll be down in a minute. You look beautiful, Maria said softly. Don't let them make you feel otherwise. The words helped, a little. Grace made her way downstairs, her heels echoing on marble. Voices drifted from the formal living room. Vincenzo's mother's sharp tones, unfamiliar laughter, the clink of glasses. Vincenzo appeared at the bottom of the stairs, wearing a dark suit that made him look every inch the powerful businessman. But his eyes were warm when he saw her, and his smile was just for her. Hey, he said softly, taking her hand. You ready? No? Good. Me neither. He kissed her knuckles. Let's go make everyone uncomfortable. They walked into the living room together. The conversation stopped. Everyone turned to stare. Vincenzo's mother, Holland Bellanova, stood by the fireplace in a severe black dress, her expression carefully neutral. Next to her was a distinguished older man Grace recognized from photos as Aldo Marchetti, Francesca's father. And there was Francesca herself, wearing white like a bride, her perfect face twisted with barely concealed fury. Mama, Vincenzo said calmly, everyone, I'd like you to meet Grace Holland, my girlfriend. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Helen's composure cracked just slightly. Vincenzo, we discussed this. No, you talked. I listened. There's a difference. He guided Grace further into the room. Grace, this is my mother, Helen, Aldo Marchetti, and I believe you've met Francesca. Charming, Francesca said, the word dripping venom. You brought the help to family dinner. I brought the woman I love to meet important people in my life, Vincenzo corrected, his voice dangerous. Show her respect or leave. Aldo Marchetti cleared his throat. Perhaps we should all sit down, discuss this like adults. They moved to the dining room, and Grace found herself seated between Vincenzo and Andrew, who'd arrived early and offered her an encouraging wink. Across the table, Francesca watched her like a predator sizing up prey. Dinner was excruciating. The first course arrived. Delicate antipasti, prosciutto, and melon, fresh mozzarella. Grace tried to remember everything Vincenzo had taught her about Italian dining etiquette, tried not to let her hands shake. "So, Grace," Helen said, her accent making the name sound foreign. "Vincenzo tells me you're from Nebraska. How quaint. What do your parents do?" "They're farmers," Grace said, keeping her voice steady. "Corn and soybeans mostly." "Farmers, I see." Helen sipped her wine. "And you came to Italy for what exactly?" "Work. The opportunity to experience a different culture. As a maid." "Yes, ma'am." Francesca laughed, sharp and cutting. "How industrious. Tell me, is seducing your employer part of the job description, or did you improvise that part?" "Francesca," Vincenzo's voice was deadly quiet. "One more word, and you're out." "Oh, please, we're all thinking it." She leaned forward. "This little nobody saw an opportunity and took it. Can't blame her, really. How else would a corn farmer's daughter ever get close to this kind of money?" Grace's cheeks burned, but she met Francesca's eyes. "You're right. I did see an opportunity. I saw a man who was kind and funny and treated people with respect, regardless of their background. I saw someone who deserved better than what he was settling for." She paused. "I guess we both saw opportunities. The difference is mine didn't involve betraying him." Silence. Francesca's face went pale, then red. Aldo Marchetti looked uncomfortable. Helen's expression was unreadable. Then Andrew started laughing. "Oh, I like her. I really like her." "This is ridiculous," Helen said. "Vincenzo, you cannot be serious about this girl. She has no family connections, no understanding of our world." "She has integrity," Vincenzo interrupted. "She has compassion. She works hard, cares about people, doesn't treat others as means to an end. Everything I value, but not everything your family needs." Aldo Marchetti's voice was firm. "Helen and I have been negotiating a substantial merger. Your marriage to Francesca was part of those negotiations." "Then renegotiate without it." Vincenzo's hand found Grace's under the table. "I'll handle the business side personally. Better terms, better timeline, better for everyone. But my personal life is not part of any deal." "You'd throw away everything we've built for a woman you barely know?" Helen's composure was cracking. "For a girl who will never understand the responsibilities you carry?" "I know he works too hard," Grace said quietly, surprising herself. "I know he carries the weight of everyone's expectations and never complains. I know he hates olives, but pretends to love them for your olive groves. I know he checks on his employees' families, remembers their children's names, cares about people beyond what they can do for him." She looked at Helen. "Maybe I don't know your world, but I know him, and I think that matters more." The table went quiet again. Helen studied Grace for a long moment. "You love my son?" "Yes, ma'am. And you understand what you'd be taking on? The scrutiny, the expectations, the pressure." "I'm learning." "It won't be easy. People will judge you, dismiss you, try to use your relationship for their own gain." "They already do," Grace said honestly. "But I'm still here." Something shifted in Helen's expression. Not acceptance exactly, but consideration. Like she was seeing Grace as a person for the first time, instead of an obstacle. "The emerald suits you," Helen said finally. "Brings out your eyes." It wasn't approval, but it wasn't rejection either. Francesca stood abruptly. "This is absurd. Aldo, we're leaving." "Sit down, Francesca," her father said tiredly. "This isn't your battle anymore." "But the merger will happen or won't happen based on business merits, not on who your ex-boyfriend is sleeping with. Aldo turned to Vincenzo. Send me your proposals for the Lazio properties. We'll negotiate like professionals instead of arranging marriages like it's the 16th century. Vincenzo nodded. I'll have something to you by Wednesday. Francesca looked between them all, realization dawning that she'd lost. You're all insane, she spat. Fine. Enjoy your little farmer's daughter, Vincenzo. When she gets bored of playing Cinderella and goes back to her cows, don't come crawling back to me. She stormed out. Aldo sighed, apologized, and followed. The remaining dinner was still awkward, but less hostile. Helen asked Grace careful questions about Nebraska, about her family, about her education. Grace answered honestly, not trying to impress, just being herself. By the time dessert arrived, tiramisu that melted on the tongue. Helen was almost smiling. You should bring her to the villa in Positano next month, she told Vincenzo. Let her see the coast. I'd like that, Vincenzo said, squeezing Grace's hand. After dinner, Helen pulled Grace aside while Vincenzo talked business with Aldo. I won't pretend I'm thrilled about this, she said bluntly. You're not what I envisioned for my son. I know. But... Helen paused. I haven't seen Vincenzo this happy in years, maybe ever. And I've learned that sometimes. Sometimes the thing we don't expect is exactly what we need. I'll take care of him, Grace promised. I know I'm not what you wanted, but I'll try to be what he needs. See that you do. Helen's expression softened just slightly. And Grace, that comment about the olives. Don't tell anyone. It would devastate his Uncle Salvatore. Grace smiled. Your secret's safe with me. The weeks following that disastrous-turned-successful dinner passed in a haze of cautious hope. Grace still worked at the estate, insisted on it actually, despite Vincenzo's protests. I'm not going to be someone who just takes from you, she'd said firmly. I need to contribute, need to feel like I'm earning my place here. So she continued her duties, though the other staff treated her differently now. Some with respect, some with envy, a few with outright resentment. Maria remained her ally, teaching her more Italian, sharing gossip about the family dynamics Grace was now part of. Vincenzo was consumed with the Marchetti negotiations, spending long hours on calls and in meetings, proving he could deliver a better deal without the marriage alliance. He came to bed exhausted most nights, fell asleep with Grace curled against him in his room. She'd moved out of the servant quarters 2 weeks ago, another shift that made everything feel more permanent, more real. They hadn't slept together. Not in that way. Just held each other while they talked about their days, about dreams and fears, and all the small things that built intimacy brick by brick. Vincenzo seemed content with that, never pushing for more, and Grace was grateful for the patience even as part of her, wondered when he'd expect something she wasn't sure she was ready to give. Penny for your thoughts, Vincenzo said one morning over breakfast on the terrace. Their routine had expanded now. Sometimes Andrew joined them, sometimes Uncle Salvatore, sometimes it was just the two of them. Just thinking about how strange life is, Grace said, watching the sunrise paint the vineyards gold. 6 months ago I was scrubbing toilets and trying to be invisible. Now I'm having breakfast with you like it's normal. It is normal. Our normal anyway. He reached across the table, laced his fingers through hers. Do you miss it? The invisibility? Sometimes, she admitted. It was simpler, safer. Nobody expected anything from me except clean floors and fresh coffee. And now? Now everyone's watching, waiting to see if I'll screw up, if I'll prove them right that I don't belong here. She met his eyes. Your mother is trying, I can tell, but she still looks at me sometimes like I'm a puzzle she can't solve. She'll come around completely. She just needs time. Vincenzo stood, came around the table, kissed her forehead gently. And Grace, you do belong here. Not because of me, not because you're proving anything to anyone, just because you choose to be here. That's enough. If only it felt that simple. The trouble started on a Tuesday afternoon. Grace was in the library, dusting shelves while listening to an Italian language podcast, when her phone rang. Unknown number, but with an American area code. Hello? Is this Grace Holland? A woman's voice, professional, clipped. Yes, who's? This is Jennifer Martinez from the U.S. Embassy in Rome. We've been trying to reach you regarding your work visa status. Grace's stomach dropped. My visa? What about it? There's been a complaint filed suggesting you're working outside the parameters of your employment authorization. We'll need you to come in for an interview next week to verify your current employment status and living arrangements. A complaint? From who? I'm not at liberty to say. But Ms. Holland, if we find that you violated the terms of your visa, you could face deportation and a ban from returning to Italy for several years. The phone call lasted another 10 minutes, Grace frantically taking notes, her hands shaking. After she hung up, she just stood there in the library, trying to process what had just happened. Someone had reported her to immigration. Someone wanted her gone. She didn't have to guess who. Vincenzo was in Milan for meetings, wouldn't be back until late. Grace considered calling him, then decided against it. He was already dealing with enough pressure from the Marchetti negotiations. He didn't need this too. Instead, she called the one person she trusted to be honest with her. Andrew, I need your help. They met at a small cafe in Fiesole, away from the estate and prying eyes. Grace explained everything while Andrew listened, his usual cheerful expression growing darker. Francesca, he said flatly. Has to be. She's the only one vindictive enough. But how would she even know about my visa situation? She probably doesn't. Probably just made a vague complaint hoping to cause trouble. Andrew drummed his fingers on the table. The question is, can they actually deport you? I don't know. My visa is tied to my employment as household staff. If they determine I'm not actually working in that capacity anymore. She trailed off, the implications clear. Because you're living with Vincenzo now, sharing his room, his life. Yes. Andrew was quiet for a moment. Does Vincenzo know? Not yet. He's in Milan, and I didn't want to distract him from the negotiations. Grace, you have to tell him. Like, immediately. Andrew pulled out his phone. This is exactly the kind of thing Francesca wants. To divide you two. Make you handle it alone. Drive a wedge between you. I can handle my own problems. This isn't about handling it alone versus together. It's about being partners. His voice was gentle but firm. Vincenzo would be devastated if you kept this from him. You know that, right? She did know that. Knew that Vincenzo had asked for her trust, had promised to face everything together. Keeping this secret would be a betrayal of that promise. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll tell him. Good. And Grace, we'll figure this out. My family has lawyers who specialize in immigration. We'll find a solution. But even as he said it, Grace felt the old fear creeping back, the certainty that this had been too good to be true, that girls like her didn't get fairy tale endings, that eventually the universe would correct this mistake and send her back where she belonged. Vincenzo returned from Milan around 9 that night, exhausted and hungry and glad to be home. He found Grace in their room, sitting on the bed with her laptop open, surrounded by papers. Hey, he said, loosening his tie. Sorry I'm so late. The negotiations ran long, but I think we're close to a deal that actually... He trailed off, really looking at her. What's wrong? I need to tell you something. The fear in her voice made him cross the room immediately. Grace, what happened? She told him. About the call, the complaint, the possibility of deportation. watched his expression shift from concern to anger to something harder, more dangerous. "Francesca," he said, his voice cold. "We don't know that for sure." "Yes, we do." He pulled out his phone, started typing furiously. "I'm calling our lawyers right now. We'll fight this. Prove you're employed legitimately. Show that. Vincenzo, wait." Grace caught his wrist. Maybe this is a sign." He went very still. "A sign of what?" "That this isn't sustainable. That we're trying to force something that doesn't fit." The words hurt to say, but she'd been thinking them all afternoon. "Your ex-girlfriend is filing complaints to get me deported. Your mother still looks uncomfortable when I'm around. I'm causing problems for you, for your family." "Stop." He set down his phone, took both her hands in his. "Grace, look at me. Look at me." She did, and saw something fierce burning in his eyes. This is exactly what she wants. "Francesca, my mother's expectations, all of it. They want you to doubt yourself, doubt us, decide it's easier to walk away than to fight." His grip tightened. "But I didn't fall in love with you because it was easy. I fell in love with you because you're worth fighting for. Worth fighting with. But if I get deported, then we'll figure it out. I'll come to Nebraska. We'll get married. We'll do whatever it takes." The words came out rushed, desperate. "Grace, please don't give up on us because Francesca is making trouble. Please don't let her win." "Get married?" Grace repeated, her heart stuttering. Vincenzo froze, realizing what he'd just said. That came out wrong. I'm not proposing, not like this. I just meant, if it comes to that, if it's the only way to keep you here." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "I'm making this worse. You'd marry me? To keep me in Italy?" "I'd marry you because I love you. The visa would just be a convenient excuse." He laughed shakily. "God, this is not how I imagined this conversation going." Grace felt tears prick her eyes, but for once, they weren't from fear or sadness. "I love you too, and I don't want to leave. But Vincenzo, I need to know. If this doesn't work out, if the visa thing falls through, or if your family never accepts me, or if I just can't do this life, will you resent me for making you choose?" "No." No hesitation. "Grace, you're not making me choose anything. I'm choosing you. Every day, every moment, I choose you. And yeah, maybe it's complicated and messy and harder than it should be. But so what? Anything worth having is hard." She kissed him then, leaning up to press her lips against his, trying to pour everything. She felt into that single connection. He responded immediately, pulling her closer, one hand cradling her face while the other wrapped around her waist. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in. "We'll call the lawyers in the morning," Vincenzo said finally. "Get ahead of this. And Grace, I'm going to make some calls about Francesca too. If she did file that complaint, she's going to regret it. Don't do anything that'll make things worse. I won't. But I'm also not going to let her hurt you without consequences." His jaw set in that stubborn way she'd learned, meant his mind was made up. She crossed a line. They spent the rest of the night researching visa laws, calling colleagues who might have advice, planning their strategy. By midnight, they drafted emails to 3 different immigration lawyers and made a list of documents Grace would need for the embassy interview. "We've got this," Vincenzo said, pulling her down onto the bed, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "I promise. We've got this." Grace wanted to believe him, tried to push down the fear whispering that promises weren't enough, that love couldn't fix everything, that sometimes the world just didn't cooperate with what you wanted. But she was so tired of being afraid, so tired of expecting the worst. So she let herself believe, just for tonight, that maybe this time things would work out. The next morning brought unexpected help from an unexpected source, Helen appeared at breakfast, which was unusual. She normally took her meals in her private suite. She sat down across from Grace and Vincenzo with a cup of espresso and a determined expression. "I heard about the visa complaint," she said without preamble. Grace and Vincenzo exchanged glances. "How did you? I have my sources. And before you ask, no, I did not have anything to do with it." Helen's tone was crisp. "But I do have connections at the embassy. I've already made some calls." "Mama," Vincenzo started. "Let me finish." She held up a hand. "I also spoke with Francesca's father this morning. Aldo was horrified when I suggested his daughter might be behind this. Apparently Francesca has been making quite a nuisance of herself lately, calling him at all hours, demanding he revoke the Marchetti deal unless you take her back." "What did he say?" Grace asked quietly. "He told her to grow up and move on. Then he called me to apologize on her behalf." Helen sipped her espresso. "I suspect we won't have any more trouble from that quarter. Aldo is a proud man, and his daughter embarrassed him." Vincenzo leaned back in his chair, studying his mother. "Why are you helping?" "Because whether I like it or not, Grace is part of this family now, and we protect our own." Helen's gaze shifted to Grace. "I still think you're too young, too inexperienced, too unfamiliar with our world. But my son loves you, and I've learned that his happiness matters more than my plans." "Thank you," Grace whispered. "I know this isn't easy for you." "No, it's not. But very little worth doing is easy." Helen stood. "Now, you have an embassy appointment next week. I've arranged for our family lawyer, Antonio Ricci, to accompany you. He's handled dozens of these cases. Follow his advice, and you'll be fine." She left as abruptly as she'd arrived, leaving Grace staring after her. "Did your mother just help me?" "Apparently." Vincenzo looked bemused. "I told you she'd come around." "That wasn't coming around. That was strategic protection of family assets. Grace, to my mother, those are the same thing." He pulled her close. "But I'll take it. Whatever her reasons, she's on our side now." The embassy interview the following Tuesday was nerve-wracking but ultimately anticlimactic. Antonio Ricci was a small, sharp-eyed man in his 60s who'd been handling Bellanova legal matters for 3 decades. He brought documentation proving Grace's legitimate employment, letters from Helen confirming her continued role in the household, and a pointed suggestion that the original complaint had been filed in bad faith by a disgruntled third party. The embassy official, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, reviewed everything with professional efficiency. "Ms. Holland, I'm going to be frank with you," she said. "This complaint was vague and unsupported. Without concrete evidence of visa violation, we can't take action. However," she paused, "your current situation is somewhat ambiguous. You're employed as household staff but living in a personal relationship with your employer. That's not technically a violation, but it does raise questions." "What kind of questions?" Grace asked. "Questions about whether your primary purpose in Italy is employment or personal relationship. If it's the latter, you should consider applying for a different type of visa." Antonio leaned forward. "Such as?" "A family reunion visa, if you were to marry an Italian citizen, or a long-term residence permit based on other grounds." Patricia looked at Grace. "I'm not saying you need to do anything immediately. Just be aware that your current status may not be sustainable long-term." After the meeting, Antonio drove Grace back to the estate. "Don't worry too much," he said. "These things have a way of working themselves out. Besides, if Vincenzo is serious about you, and he certainly seems to be, marriage would solve the problem permanently." Marriage. There was that word again. Grace had been trying not to think about it too much. Yes, Vincenzo had mentioned it during their argument, but that had been in the heat of the moment. A desperate solution to a desperate problem. Not a real proposal. Not a promise of forever. Was it? She found Vincenzo in his office, on a video call with someone in Rome. He caught sight of her through the glass door, held up one finger. 1 minute. She nodded, settled into the chair outside his office to wait. Her phone buzzed. Jenna. Hey Gracie, just wanted to let you know the doctors are really happy with my latest scans. They're talking about remission, maybe, if the next few months go well. Grace felt tears spring to her eyes. Jenna, that's amazing. I know, right? And it's because of you, because you made this possible. Her sister's voice was thick with emotion. I don't know how to thank you for what you've sacrificed. You don't need to thank me. You're my sister. I'd do anything for you. I know. But Grace, I also don't want you sacrificing your own happiness. Mom told me about the Italian guy, about how serious it's getting. Don't stay there just for the money if you're not happy. I am happy, Grace said softly. Scared and confused and in over my head, but happy. Then stay scared and confused and happy. Life's too short for anything else. They talked for a few more minutes before saying goodbye. When Grace looked up, Vincenzo was standing in his office, doorway, watching her with an unreadable expression. Good news, he asked. The best. Jenna's scans look good. They're talking about remission. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. Grace, that's wonderful. You must be so relieved. I am. She stood, moved closer to him. I keep thinking about what happens now. If Jenna gets better, if she doesn't need the expensive treatments anymore, what's my reason for staying in Italy? Something flickered across his face. Is that the only reason you're here? The money? No, God, no. But it was the original reason, and I guess I'm wondering, what are the new reasons? What am I building here? Vincenzo was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand, pulled her into his office, closed the door. I've been thinking about that too, he said. About what we're building, where this is going. And Grace, I don't have all the answers. I can't promise everything will be perfect, or that my family will ever fully understand us, or that there won't be more challenges like Francesca and the visa stuff. Okay. But I can promise that I'm serious about this. About you. About us. About building something real. He reached into his desk drawer, pulled out a small velvet box. Grace's heart stopped. This isn't a proposal, Vincenzo said quickly. Not yet, not until you're ready. But I want you to have this. Want you to know that I'm thinking about forever. That when you're ready, when we're both ready, I want to make this official. He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold ring with a small emerald stone, the same color as the dress she'd worn to dinner with his family. It was my grandmother's, he said softly. She gave it to my mother, who gave it to me years ago with instructions to give it to the woman I wanted to spend my life with. And Grace, that's you. However long it takes, whatever obstacles we face, it's you. She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. You don't have to wear it now. He continued. You don't have to decide anything. I just wanted you to know that this isn't temporary for me. You're not a phase or a rebellion or a way to get back at Francesca. You're everything. Grace took the box with shaking hands, looked at the ring that represented promises and possibilities and a future she'd never let herself imagine. Can I think about it? She whispered. Take all the time you need. He kissed her forehead, gentle and sweet. I'm not going anywhere. The next few weeks passed in a strange state of limbo. Grace kept the ring box in her drawer, took it out sometimes late at night when Vincenzo was asleep, tried to imagine herself wearing it, tried to imagine being Grace Bellanova instead of Grace Holland, tried to see herself in this life permanently instead of temporarily. The visa situation resolved itself quietly. No more calls from the embassy, no more complaints. Francesca apparently took her father's scolding to heart and disappeared from their lives, though Grace sometimes felt her presence like a ghost, a reminder of how easily things could fall apart. Vincenzo took her to Positano in October, just the two of them in the family's coastal villa. They spent days exploring the Amalfi Coast, eating fresh seafood at tiny restaurants, swimming in the impossibly blue Mediterranean. It was perfect, magical, everything a romantic getaway should be. But Grace couldn't fully relax into it, couldn't stop the small voice in her head asking what she was doing, whether this was real, whether she deserved any of it. One evening, sitting on the villa's terrace watching the sunset over the water, Vincenzo finally called her on it. "You're somewhere else," he said. "You've been somewhere else for weeks. Talk to me, Grace. What's going on?" She considered deflecting, pretending everything was fine, but she'd promised him honesty. "I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop," she admitted. "Waiting for something to go wrong for you to realize this was a mistake, for your family to decide I'm not worth the trouble. And what would convince you that's not going to happen? I don't know. Maybe nothing." She drew her knees up to her chest. "Vincenzo, I'm not good at this, at trusting that good things can last. My whole life has been about survival, about getting through the next crisis. I don't know how to just be happy without waiting for it to end." He moved closer, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "Then, we'll learn together. Because I'm not great at this either. I'm good at business, at strategy, at making deals. But this, being vulnerable, trusting someone completely, building something that isn't about contracts or negotiations, I'm making it up as I go. You make it look easy. That's because I'm terrified of messing this up, so I'm trying really hard." He turned her to face him. "Grace, I need you to hear this. You are not a burden. You are not causing problems. You are the best thing that's happened to me, and I wake up every morning grateful that you're still here, still choosing this, still choosing me. Even when I'm being difficult and scared and can't get out of my own head. Especially then, because it means you care, means this matters to you as much as it matters to me." She leaned against him, let herself sink into his warmth and solidity. "I want to say yes to the ring. I want to believe in forever. I'm just not there yet. That's okay. I can wait." He kissed the top of her head. "I'm good at waiting when it matters." They sat like that until the stars came out, until the temperature dropped and they had to go inside. Made dinner together in the villa's kitchen, just pasta and sauce and fresh bread, nothing fancy. Ate on the terrace wrapped in blankets, talking about everything and nothing. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," Grace said suddenly. Vincenzo thought about it. "When I found Francesca with Tommaso, my first thought wasn't anger or heartbreak. It was relief. Relief? Because I finally had a reason to end it. We'd been engaged for a year, and I'd never once felt excited about marrying her. Just resigned. Like it was inevitable." He played with Grace's fingers. "Finding her in bed with my best friend hurt, but it also freed me. Gave me permission to walk away from something I never wanted in the first place. And Tommaso, your friendship, was never as real as I thought. He apologized later, said Francesca had pursued him, made him think I didn't really love her. Maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I didn't want people in my life who could justify that kind of betrayal. I'm sorry," Grace said softly. "Don't be. If none of that had happened, I might have married Francesca. Might have spent my whole life in a comfortable, empty relationship, never knowing it could be different." His eyes met hers. "Never knowing it could be this. This mess? This beautiful, complicated, messy, real thing we have." "Yeah." Smiled. "I'll take our mess over that empty comfort any day." Grace wanted to tell him she felt the same, wanted to put words to the enormousness of what she felt. But sometimes words weren't enough, weren't adequate to the task. So instead she kissed him, soft and slow, trying to communicate everything through that simple connection. He responded gently, reverently, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. "I'm falling more in love with you every day," she whispered against his lips. "It's terrifying." "Good. Let's be terrified together." They went to bed early that night, wrapped around each other in the villa's big bed, listening to the sound of waves against the rocks below. Grace thought about the ring in her drawer back at the estate, about promises and futures, and choosing to believe in happy endings. Maybe she wasn't ready yet, but she was getting closer. And for now, that was enough. November brought rain to Tuscany, turning the vineyards gray and the cypress trees dark against clouded skies. Grace didn't mind. She'd always liked rain, the way it made everything feel softer, quieter, more introspective. She was in the estate's greenhouse, tending to Helen's orchids, a task that had somehow become hers over the past month. The older woman had mentioned once that the orchids needed special attention, and Grace had offered to help, and now it was another one of those small rituals that wove her deeper into the fabric of this place. "You're good with them," Helen said from the doorway, making Grace jump. "They're finicky but rewarding," Grace replied, misting the delicate blooms. "Kind of like, well, like this family," Helen finished with a slight smile. "You can say it. We are rather high maintenance." Grace laughed despite herself. "I wasn't going to put it quite that way." Helen moved into the greenhouse, inspecting the plants with a critical eye. "They look better than when I was caring for them. You have a talent for this." "My mom has a huge garden back home. I grew up helping her. She always said plants respond to patience and attention, same as people." "Smart woman, your mother." Helen paused. "Have you told your parents about Vincenzo? About everything?" Grace's hand stilled on the watering can. "Not everything. They know I'm dating someone, but I haven't told them how serious it is." "Why not?" "Because they'll worry. Because they'll think I'm getting in over my head, that I'm going to get hurt." She set down the watering can. "Because maybe they're right." "Grace." Helen's voice was surprisingly gentle. "Look at me." Grace did. "My son is many things. Stubborn, intense, sometimes too focused on business. But he is not careless with the things he loves. And he loves you. That much is obvious to anyone with eyes." She touched one of the orchid blooms. "I raised him to honor his commitments, to choose carefully, and then stand by those choices. If he's chosen you, he won't walk away easily." "But what if I'm not enough? What if I can't be what this family needs?" "What this family needs is someone who makes Vincenzo happy. Someone who challenges him, grounds him, reminds him that life is more than spreadsheets and negotiations." Helen met her eyes. "You do that. The rest, the social graces, the understanding of our world, those can be learned. What you already have, your integrity, your kindness, your strength, those cannot be taught." Grace felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Don't thank me yet. I still expect you to learn proper Italian table etiquette before Christmas. We're hosting the family gathering this year, and I won't have my future daughter-in-law embarrassing us." Helen said it with a small smile that took the sting out of the words. Future daughter-in-law. The phrase hung in the air between them. "He showed you the ring," Grace said softly. "He showed me, and I gave him my blessing, though he didn't ask for it." Helen adjusted one of the orchid stakes. "Grace, I know I haven't made this easy for you. I had very specific ideas about who my son should marry, what kind of woman would fit into this life. You were not what I expected." "I know. But sometimes the unexpected is exactly what we need. My own marriage was arranged by our families. Strategic, sensible, appropriate. And it was fine, comfortable. We had 3 sons together, built a successful partnership. But it was never... She paused, seeming to search for words. It was never what I see when I watch you and Vincenzo together. That spark, that genuine connection, that willingness to fight for each other. You're saying I should accept the ring. I'm saying you should do what feels right for you, not what you think we expect or what you think you deserve. Helen's gaze was steady. But yes, if you love my son, if you want to build a life with him, then stop waiting for permission. Take what's offered and build something beautiful with it. Grace spent the rest of the day thinking about that conversation, about permission and worthiness, and choosing to believe in good things. By the time Vincenzo returned from meetings in Siena that evening, she'd made a decision. She found him in their room, changing out of his suit, looking exhausted. "Long day?" she asked from the doorway. "The longest. Marchetti keeps changing the terms, and Uncle Salvatore is being difficult about the Umbrian properties. And..." He stopped, really looked at her. "What's wrong? You have that look." "What look?" "The one that means you're about to say something that'll either make me very happy or break my heart." He came closer, worry creasing his brow. "Which is it?" Grace pulled the velvet box from her pocket. She'd been carrying it around all afternoon, working up the courage. Opened it to reveal the emerald ring. "I want to say yes," she said quietly, "but I need you to understand something first." Vincenzo went very still. "Okay. I'm scared. Terrified, actually. This life, your world, all of it. I'm still figuring it out. I'm going to make mistakes, probably embarrass you at family events, say the wrong thing to important people. I'm going to have days where I doubt everything and want to run back to Nebraska." She took a shaky breath. "But I don't want to do any of that without you. I don't want to learn and grow and mess up and figure it out with anyone else. So if you're still willing, if you still want me, despite all my doubts and fears and complete lack of social grace..." "Grace." He was across the room in 2 strides, taking her face in his hands. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying yes. Yes to the ring. Yes to forever. Yes to building something real and messy and beautiful with you." Tears spilled over. "Yes to all of it." He kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise. Lifted her off her feet, spun her around, laughed against her, mouth like he couldn't contain the joy. "Yes," he repeated when they finally pulled apart. "God, Grace. Yes." He took the ring from the box with shaking hands, slid it onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. Like it had been waiting for her all along. "We should call people," Grace said, staring at the ring, at the way it caught the light. "Your mother. My parents. Jenna. Later." Vincenzo pulled her close again. "Right now, I just want to be here with you, in this moment, before the world knows and everything gets complicated again." So they did. Sat on the floor of their room with their backs against the bed, her hand in his, just breathing together and letting the magnitude of it sink in. "When?" Grace asked eventually. "When do you want to?" "Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next year, I don't care, as long as it happens." "Your mother mentioned Christmas, that the family gathering is here this year. You want to get married at Christmas?" Vincenzo sounded surprised. "Maybe not married, but engaged officially. Announce it to everyone. Make it real." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Give me 2 months to get used to the idea before we actually do it." 2 months, 2 years, whatever you need." He kissed her temple. "Though fair warning, once my family knows, my mother will take over all the planning. You'll have no say in flowers or venues or anything. I'm okay with that. Let her have it. I think she needs to feel involved, needs to feel like she's shaping this somehow. You're very wise for someone so young. I'm not that young, and you're not that old. 33 feels ancient some days. You're in your prime, old man. She poked his ribs, making him laugh. Besides, I like the age gap. Makes you feel more stable, grounded. Is that what I am? Stable and grounded? Among other things. She tilted her head up to look at him. You're also kind and funny and terrible at hiding your feelings and surprisingly romantic for a businessman who deals in olive groves and vineyard mergers. Surprisingly romantic. I'll take it. His arms tightened around her. Grace, I need you to know. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. I work too much. I get obsessed with deals. I forget to communicate when I'm stressed. I'm not perfect. Good. I don't want perfect. I just want real. Then real is what you'll get. All of it. The good, the bad, the complicated family dynamics, the long hours, the pressure. All of it. I know. And I'm bringing my own mess, my insecurities, my tendency to overthink everything, my complete inability to understand Italian business culture. She wove her fingers through his. But we'll figure it out together, right? Together, he agreed. Always together. They called Jenna first, after finally getting up off the floor. Her sister screamed so loud Grace had to hold the phone away from her ear. Are you kidding me right now? You're engaged? To the Italian billionaire? Grace Elizabeth Holland, you better send me pictures immediately, or I'm flying over there to kick your butt. He's not a billionaire. He's close enough. Oh my God, Mom and Dad are going to lose their minds. Have you told them yet? You're the first. I needed to tell you first. Grace's voice caught. Jenna, I wouldn't be here without you. Wouldn't have taken this job. Wouldn't have met Vincenzo. Wouldn't have any of this. So thank you for getting sick. Gracie, don't. I mean it. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. Your illness brought me here, and now I'm happier than I've ever been. So thank you. Jenna was crying now, too. You're welcome, you ridiculous person. Now go call Mom and Dad before I do it for you. The call to her parents was harder, more emotional. Her father said very little, just, "Is he good to you?" And when Grace said yes, he replied, "Then that's all that matters." Her mother cried and asked a million questions and demanded to meet Vincenzo as soon as possible. Bring him home for Thanksgiving, she insisted. If he's going to be part of this family, he needs to experience a proper Midwestern holiday. Mom, Thanksgiving is in 2 weeks. I don't know if 2 weeks is plenty of time. Tell him to bring a warm coat. November in Nebraska is cold. Vincenzo, listening to the conversation on speaker, looked equal parts amused and terrified. Grace just laughed. We'll be there, she promised. I can't wait for you to meet him. After the calls, they went downstairs to tell Helen, found her in the formal sitting room with Andrew and Uncle Salvatore, discussing something about the winter harvest. We have news, Vincenzo announced, and the room went quiet. Grace held up her hand, showing the ring. We're engaged. Officially. We wanted you to know before we tell everyone else at Christmas. Andrew whooped, jumped up to hug them both. Salvatore smiled broadly, shook Vincenzo's hand, and kissed Grace's cheeks. About time, nipote. I was beginning to think you'd never ask. Helen stood more slowly, came to examine the ring on Grace's finger. My mother's ring, she said softly. It suits you. Thank you, Grace whispered, for everything. For giving us a chance, for helping with the visa situation, for not giving up on me even when I was sure you would. Family doesn't give up on family. Helen kissed her forehead, a surprisingly tender gesture. Welcome, Grace. Truly welcome. The rest of November passed in a blur of planning and preparation. Helen did indeed take over all the engagement party details, recruiting Maria and several other staff members to help transform the estate into a winter wonderland for Christmas. Grace and Vincenzo flew to Nebraska for Thanksgiving, and watching him navigate her family's chaotic holiday was both hilarious and heartwarming. He gamely helped her father fix a broken tractor, learned to shuck corn from her mother, played video games with Jenna, who was home from the hospital for the holiday. "He's good," Jenna told Grace on their last night there, the two of them wrapped in blankets on the porch swing. Like, genuinely good. Not trying too hard, not condescending, just present. "You picked well, sis." "I didn't pick him, he picked me." "Nah, you picked each other. That's how it works when it's right." They flew back to Italy the day after Thanksgiving, and Grace felt something settle in her chest. That trip home had been important, seeing her two worlds collide, watching Vincenzo fit seamlessly into her childhood memories. Proof that this could work, that they could bridge the gap between Nebraska and Tuscany. December arrived with preparations kicking into high gear. The estate was decorated with thousands of white lights, fresh garlands, a massive tree in the main hall. Helen invited everyone. All the extended Bellanova family, business associates, friends. The engagement party had somehow morphed into a major event. "I'm going to mess this up," Grace said the night before, staring at her closet full of new dresses. "I'm going to forget someone's name, or use the wrong fork, or trip over my own feet. Then you'll mess up." Vincenzo came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist. "And everyone will see that you're human, and life will go on. Your cousins from Milano are coming. Your mother said they're very traditional." "My cousins from Milano are snobs, who spend more time judging others than examining their own lives. Don't worry about them. Easy for you to say." He turned her around, tipped her chin up. "Grace, do you remember the first morning we had breakfast together? What you said when I asked why you wore that red dress? That I wanted to look nice for a date? No. You said you wanted to be seen. After 8 months of being invisible, you put on that dress and stepped out into the world." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Tomorrow, I want you to do the same thing. Step out, be seen. Let everyone know that you belong here. Not because you earned it or proved yourself, but because you chose to be here. That's enough. You are enough." She kissed him then, gentle and grateful. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. Half the time, I'm making it up and hoping it works." The next evening, Grace stood at the top of the main staircase in a dress the color of winter roses, soft pink that made her look ethereal, almost dreamlike. Her hair was styled in loose waves, the emerald ring catching the light on her finger. Below, the estate glittered with guests and laughter and champagne. Vincenzo waited at the bottom of the stairs in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, looking up at her with such open adoration that Grace felt her nerves settle. This was it. The moment where she stepped fully into this life, claimed her place in this world. No more hiding, no more doubts, no more waiting for permission. She descended the stairs, her hand trailing along the marble banister, and every eye in the room turned to watch. The maid in gray was gone completely, replaced by someone stronger, surer, ready. Vincenzo met her at the bottom, took her hand, kissed it gently. "You're magnificent. I'm terrified. Be terrified. Just don't run." "I'm not running." She squeezed his hand. "Not anymore." He led her into the crowd, introduced her to cousins and business associates and family friends. Grace smiled, made conversation, remembered names and titles. Caught Helen watching from across the room with an approving nod. Saw Andrew raise his glass in a silent toast. The evening passed in a whirl of faces and well wishes and congratulations. Some people were genuinely warm, others clearly skeptical. Grace didn't care. She had Vincenzo's hand in hers, had his family's acceptance, had a future spreading out before her like an open road. Near midnight, Vincenzo pulled her away from the party, led her out to the terrace where they'd had their first breakfast together. The December air was cold, crisp, perfect. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better than expected. Your cousin Gabriella actually told me she admired my courage. Gabriella is smart, unlike some of our relatives. Your great-aunt definitely doesn't approve of me. My great-aunt doesn't approve of anyone born after 1950. Don't take it personally." He pulled her close, and they swayed together, even though there was no music. "Grace, thank you." "For what?" "For saying yes. For taking a chance on this, on us, on all of it. For being brave enough to step into this life even when it scared you. I'm still scared sometimes." "Good. Means it matters." He kissed her forehead, then her nose, then both her cheeks. "I love you, Grace Holland from Nebraska. Soon to be Grace Bellanova from wherever we decide we're from. I love you too." She rested her head on his chest, listened to his heartbeat, steady and sure. "Vincenzo, I want to tell you something. Anything. I'm glad you saw me. That night in the red dress, I'm glad you finally looked at me and really saw me. Because I'd been invisible for so long, I was starting to forget what it felt like to matter. You've always mattered. I was just too blind to notice." His arms tightened around her. "But I see you now. Every day. Every moment. And I'm never looking away again." They stood like that until the cold drove them inside, until the party called them back. But Grace carried that moment with her, the promise of being seen, being chosen, being loved exactly as she was. The party wound down around 2 in the morning. Guests departed with warm goodbyes and promises to see them at the wedding. Helen hugged Grace tight, whispered, "You did beautifully, figlia mia. My daughter." Grace cried a little at that, at the acceptance in those words. Finally, it was just her and Vincenzo, climbing the stairs to their room, exhausted and happy. She kicked off her heels, he loosened his tie, and they collapsed onto the bed fully dressed. "We're getting married," Grace said to the ceiling. "We are. I'm going to be your wife." "You are? That's insane. Completely." He turned his head to look at her. "Any regrets?" She thought about the past 6 months, about red dresses and terrace breakfasts, about visa scares and family dinners, about learning to be visible again. Thought about the girl who'd scrubbed floors and kept her head down, and the woman she was becoming. "Not one," she said firmly. "You? Only that I didn't notice you sooner. That I wasted 8 months being blind. We found each other when we were supposed to. Everything happened exactly when it needed to." They fell asleep like that, still in their party clothes, hands intertwined, the ring on Grace's finger catching the moonlight through the window. And in the morning, they'd wake up and start planning their wedding. Would navigate the complicated logistics of merging their lives completely. Would face whatever challenges came next together. But for now, they just slept. Content, committed, choosing each other over and over again, just as they would for the rest of their lives. 6 months later, Grace stood in the small chapel on the Bellanova estate, wearing a dress that managed to be both elegant and understated, lace and silk that her mother had helped her choose during a trip to Florence. Jenna stood beside her as maid of honor, healthy and glowing, the leukemia in remission. Through the open doors, Grace could see the assembled guests, Vincenzo's family, her parents and relatives who'd flown over from Nebraska, friends they'd made together. 2 worlds colliding, 2 families becoming one. "You ready?" Jenna asked. Grace touched the emerald ring on her finger, soon to be joined by a wedding band. Thought about everything that had led to this moment. Every choice, every fear overcome, every step toward this new life. "I'm ready," she said. The music started. Her father appeared at her side, offered his arm. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." "Thanks, Dad." "He's a good man, your Vincenzo. Takes care of what matters." "He does." "Then let's not keep him waiting." They walked down the aisle together, and Grace saw her future unfolding with each step. Saw Vincenzo waiting at the altar in a sharp suit, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Saw Helen dabbing at her eyes, Andrew grinning like a fool, Uncle Salvatore beaming with pride. Saw her whole life spreading out before her like a promise. Her father kissed her cheek, placed her hand in Vincenzo's, stepped back. And Grace looked up at the man she was about to marry. This person who'd seen her when she'd been invisible, who'd fought for her when she'd been ready to run, who'd chosen her every single day. "Hi," she whispered. "Hi yourself." His voice was rough with emotion. "You look. If you say magnificent again, I'm walking out." He laughed, squeezed her hands. "I was going to say perfect, but I'll settle for mine." "Yours," she agreed. "Always yours." The ceremony was simple, beautiful, exactly what they both wanted. They spoke vows they'd written themselves, promising patience and partnership, promising to choose each other through every challenge and celebration, promising to build something real and lasting and true. When the priest finally said, "You may kiss the bride," Vincenzo leaned in slowly, giving Grace time to close the distance herself. Their lips met soft and sweet, sealing promises and futures, and all the tomorrows stretching ahead. The crowd erupted in applause. Grace Holland became Grace Bellanova on a perfect June day in Tuscany, surrounded by everyone who mattered, stepping fully into a life she'd never imagined, but now couldn't imagine living without. And as they walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, Grace thought about that night months ago when she'd put on a red dress just to feel visible for a few hours. She'd never imagined that one dress, one moment, one man finally looking at her would change everything. But it had, and she wouldn't change a single thing. "All right, story's done, but I want to hear from you. What moment had you glued to the screen? Was it the red dress scene, the family dinner disaster, or something else?" Like this video, subscribe and comment below. Let's chat about it.